and welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
Our Motivational Millennial guest today is Lily Fontas. Lily is a wellness coach and educator who is on a mission to help women get strong, healthy, and happy on their own terms. After struggling with a binge eating disorder and nearly burning out as a classroom teacher, she turned to bodybuilding for stress relief. By combining strength training and positive reinforcement, she found a way to live a healthy life without dieting or deprivation, and now she shares her expertise with women worldwide as an online coach. Welcome to the show, Lily.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you here. I want to just be one of the first people to say that I've already benefited from some of your messaging, the never diet again messaging. I don't know, Blake, if you want to mention how awesome Lily has been for you.
Yes, Lily has changed my life in so many ways.
Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, the never diet again. I feel like, especially this time of year when we're kind of starting a new year, that's not the mantra that a lot of people go into a new year with. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's amazing. So would you share with us a little bit about what you're up to now and why you love it?
Definitely. So what I'm up to now is I have the pleasure of working with people, mostly women worldwide, helping them create a healthy lifestyle that really works for them and makes them feel good, as opposed to from, the place of punishment or, like we were talking about, never diet again, being deprivational. And I'm really excited because I just launched a client-only fitness app. So I get to really connect with my clients all day long. And the best part of that work is really helping people create their own pathway to wellness and success, and really kind of taking, the judgment away from getting fit. So no matter where you are, you're able to access things that way. And yeah, my lifestyle is amazing. You mentioned burning out as a teacher. Now I get to create my own schedule. I always get my workouts in whenever I want, and I'm able to explore and just, enjoy my life more. So I feel really grateful for that.
Lily, I'd love to hear more about the transition for you from the teaching world and into the bodybuilding scene, because I'd imagine for a lot of people, those probably feel like two very different activities and lifestyles. So can you talk about that transition some?
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate you mentioning that, because I wasn't just any type of teacher. I was a kindergarten teacher. So I feel like people kind of hear that and they're like, wait, what? And then they see like bodybuilding is kind of like, I don't know, people think of like Arnold in the gym with like chains and men grunting. And kindergarten is like, oh, I'm wearing a sweater and I have puppets, so how do those two fit in? But I made it work, you guys. I made it work. So yeah, I think in terms of connecting those two, for me, I did have a binge eating disorder and I always wanted to be really thin. And my body type just wasn't like that. I was always an athlete. I played sports pretty much year round from the ages of like 5 to 17. And when I found bodybuilding, it really was because I was very low in terms of my self-image, and my stress level was an all-time high. I wasn't sleeping. Something just kind of came to me and just was like, okay, enough is enough. Like, going and doing tons of cardio isn't going to work anymore. For me, my vices at the time were like hot wings and red wine. And I was trying to use that to like help me de-stress, and it just wasn't working. So I love the idea of getting strong and investing in myself. And I don't know whether it was divine inspiration, whether I read an article and it was in my subconscious, but something just said to me, like, you need to get strong again. So yeah, that's really what led me to weights. Once I started lifting, I realized, hey, I'm kind of good at this. And hey, I'm seeing some new lines and some new bumps in my upper arms and in my leg that I hadn't seen before. So I wanted to celebrate it with a bodybuilding competition. So that's kind of where it all started. And I hid it for a long time. I actually didn't tell anybody that I was preparing for a competition for about 3 months, because I was a little nervous about, what people would think of me, especially being a kindergarten teacher. What if someone saw competition photos of me in a bathing suit and, I didn't want to lose my job or have someone judge me. So I had to work through that a little bit, but overwhelmingly people in my life have been really supportive. And that was a good lesson to me too, that oftentimes we judge ourselves a lot harder than other people are going to be. And, I had a lot of people say that I've motivated them to lift weights and get healthy again. So that in and of itself is really worth the risk of, people thinking I was a little bit cuckoo beans for deciding to get that spray tan and put my heels on and strut around on a stage.
And not to delve into a feminist rant, but isn't that
Bless
so
you.
absurd that like, well, first of all,
I love
congratulations.
feminist
That's
rants.
incredible. Sure. Yeah. But like, but isn't that so absurd? You just being yourself and developing your body and demonstrating that and celebrating that could be grounds for you to lose your job. As if like that isn't an incredibly inspiring thing to tell kids like, hey, if you believe in something and you own your own power to shape your life and your body, you can do things that you really care about. Like, oh, it just drives me crazy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I actually had a friend at the gym say to me, he's like, well, if it was a male teacher, like, do you think anybody would have a problem with it? And I was like, exactly what you said, Blake. No, he would be, example of what a man should be, strong and powerful and muscular. And, just because I'm a woman and just because I happen to be in a bathing suit doesn't mean that, I shouldn't be proud of my achievements. And it's funny that you mentioned being an example to kids. My students definitely noticed the change, especially because I started preparing like during the winter and I was living in Boston at the time. And as you know, you don't really see anyone's body in Boston in the winter because you're under like layers of sweaters. And I wore like, long underwear, under corduroys and all that stuff. But when my kids started to see my arms and things like that, when I was preparing, like they were very sweet about it. Cause they're 5 and 6 years old. They just tell you like it is. And they're like, oh, like Mrs. Fontas, like your arms are getting so big. And I would kind of take it as an opportunity to say, well, I've been working out and I'm getting strong. And they were so sweet. Like they would want to flex and they're like, I want to get strong like you. So kind of, yeah, it was very sweet. And, the boys and the girls both liked it. So we integrated movement breaks and, little boot camp type exercises for them as well. So I appreciate that reflection because, it is kind of hard in the moment when you're thinking about yourself. You're like, ooh, what are people going to think? But you're totally right. Being strong and healthy and, being in control of your own wellness is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of for men or women.
It's kind of like you started your wellness coaching career with 5-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly.
And you had to practice on them.
Yeah, I got a good lesson from them, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'm wondering, what is so important to you about helping people to be fit and healthy in their life?
So it starts with me really with, the biology of the human body. They say bodies that are in motion stay in motion. It's really a preventative way to keep yourself strong and living an independent life. For me, the biology, especially for women, your bone density is really protected if you have muscle mass. And coming from a family where women have had osteoporosis and seeing the ramifications of that as you get older, if I can help one person avoid that, I've reached my goal. And I think that in terms of the philosophy and kind of the mental part of it is a lot of the messaging when it comes to health and fitness is like, oh, slim down or, you want to get lean or you want to get chiseled. And that's kind of like taking away from yourself. And I feel like when I talk to a lot of women, there's always this thing too in bodybuilding, like, oh, don't get too big. Women can take up space. It's okay. No matter where you are right now, like you taking up space is just fine. And I find that growing yourself in terms of the gym and seeing your muscles and knowing your strength, it grounds you in your body and teaches you what you're capable of. It doesn't matter if you have, a couple of pounds to lose or whether you're trying to gain some muscle, because that's a lot of challenge for people too. But you're investing in yourself. You're really taking care of your vessel and you're realizing what you're capable of beyond of what you just see. So for me, it really is not only just a health thing, but it's also mental health as well. And a lot of times it means, taking self-care time for yourself that maybe you weren't investing before. I just love being part of that process.
How do you balance the attention, especially in the bodybuilding world, but I'm just thinking in general, the attention that's often encouraged maybe to really specify, okay, eating this much, macros and sort of counting a lot of the different nutritional variables and balancing that with, like you said, having it be primarily about your physical health and your mental wellness. Because I'm sure a lot of people who are listening at various points in their lives have probably struggled with, like, I really care about changing the way I eat and changing the way my body looks, but I don't feel like I necessarily have the discipline to do that. It just feels sometimes like it's all or nothing, but I'm imagining you have a probably more nuanced viewpoint on it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So in terms of all or nothing, I think that a lot of times that is, the health and fitness industry, I think the last time I checked, generates $20 billion a year. And we still have a lot of health problems in this country that have to do with obesity and just not moving our bodies the way they're designed to. And from that information, I found, my own interpretation is the health and fitness industry is not necessarily designed to get people to lose weight, keep it off, and feel good. If you have a $20 billion industry, you're selling people products, right? It goes to what you just said, like, okay, the industry tells you if you follow this plan, if you count these numbers, if you get this scale, if you do this workout, you will reach your goal. While that's not necessarily untrue, I find that most people end up starting these things, and you can have a system, but every single person's life is individual. And I always say that eating right, nutrition, and working out, those are hard sciences. You can look at a lot of data, but then you overlay it on a human life, and there's a lot of variables. So for me, when I work with people or when I'm writing an article, or if I'm just chatting with someone at the gym, which happens a lot, I always say, look at your habits and just try to do a couple of simple things at a time. It's not going to be, the super sexy transformation in 12 weeks, you lost 30 pounds. But a lot of times when people do that, they end up gaining it back because they haven't really truly replaced their old habits with new ones. So I've found, and I use my experience as a teacher, if you are able to take the skill, let's say if it's like working out or meal prepping, and breaking it down into reasonable steps, no, you're not going to lose 15 pounds in a month, but you will be able to create steady progress for yourself, and it'll also become organic. Many people who I started working with last year, when I check in with them now, they're like, oh, it just seems normal to me. And I have to kind of reflect back to them and say, hey, well, remember when you said you rather die than wake up at 5 a.m. And now you're like, oh my God, it's my most favorite part of my day, and you forget, even for me, you forget where you used to be. So I think that's a great question, Blake, because you don't want to get too obsessive with the healthy side either. And I've seen people do that with macronutrients, IIFYM, flexible dieting. Sometimes I have to say to people, I'm like, listen, guys, it's called flexible. Like, you're supposed to be flexible. You shouldn't have anxiety about going out to eat or, going to a birthday party or things like that. And that's why I really say never diet again, because the diet mentality is what really needs to go. You're not on a plan, you're not on a program, you're living your life. And in order to do that sustainably, you need to be able to create small changes that make you feel good and that they encourage you to keep going. I learned with kindergartners, if you tell a child not to do something, they won't do it again while you're looking, right? So it's the same thing with adults, right? Like, maybe you won't do it again for that 30 days when you're doing whatever diet you are, but then you're going to fall off the wagon because, hello, it's too much change at once. So I like moderation, and it's not always the sexiest tagline, but to me, it works the best and makes you feel the best too.
That does seem to be one of the complicated issues, right? Like, often the pain or the motivation that people have to make the change, like, yeah, I want to look good for summer or whatever. It's great in the sense that it's the impetus to make a change, but the problem is the time scale being so short. Like you're saying, there's an inordinate amount of pressure versus, hey, we're on a marathon. And if you look at it from a long-term perspective, it's a little harder maybe because, like you said, you might not get the 15 pounds off in a month, but over time, you're going to create the life you want, which is ultimately, I think, what most of us want.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I love strength training too, because muscle, I talked about people saying, oh, don't get too big. And people still say that to me. But it's like muscle takes a long time to grow, especially for women. We just don't have the levels. If you're a natural athlete, we don't have the levels of testosterone that are going to have you put on muscle mass like a man. So like you said, it's not a sprint. It is going to be a lifelong journey. For me, I've been an athlete for a long time. I took some time off, and I've been lifting pretty consistently for about 3 years now. And people look at me, and if you're not flexing or in a bathing suit, you wouldn't necessarily even know that. So I always tell people if they're worried about that, I'm like, listen, guys, I'm trying to do this and it's incredibly difficult. So don't worry. Your body is going to grow and change and get stronger in its own personal way. It's not going to be like you're going to wake up one night or one day and be like, oh, what happened to me? It really, you have to invest in it, and it is a lifestyle. So that definitely supports that for sure.
Accidentally swole.
Accidentally swole.
Yeah, accidentally.
From my perspective, because we've known each other for a while now, and it's been such a privilege to watch you grow your business, grow your community. I mean, you have an online community, and now you have an app that you're using, but you also have been building in-person communities, and that's really cool. And I'm wondering, in this whole journey, what do you consider sort of your biggest achievement so far, and how did you have to grow to reach that goal?
So I would think that my biggest achievement actually was believing that I could do this as a business and that I could take something that I'm so passionate about and actually create work for myself. That was difficult for me because, like many people in my generation, I graduated in the middle of a recession and I had student loans, and I'd always worked since I was 13. I was a babysitter, worked all through college. And the idea of not having money and not being able to take care of myself was really, really frightening. In the past year, I've let go of little side gigs I was doing after I quit my teaching career, and just kind of that, I want to say, precipice, like being at the very edge of it and saying like, okay, Lily, you got to live the talk now. You got to really just jump into it and go for it. So that took me a little while. It took me about probably 6 or 7 months of doing little side gigs or training in a gym and being really tired to take that leap. And part of the reason why I was able to do that was not just self-belief, but I saw people that I was working with and I saw how much benefit they were getting from me. And in the back of my mind, I was like, well, this is all great, but if you burn out, you're not going to be able to help people anymore. So that was kind of my first thought. And I think in terms of growing an online and in-person community, I recently relocated to California, and I found myself kind of being like, okay, I'm working for myself. I don't know anyone here. I'm in a brand new state. Like, what am I going to do? So really looking at my community, and I live right near Oakland and Berkeley in California, and saying, I want to meet women, maybe people who can't afford a personal trainer or who feel too shy or intimidated to go to the gym. I want to create a safe space for them where they feel good about themselves, no matter where they are, whether it's day one or, day 1,000. So creating opportunities with, little circuit classes or boot camps or just meetups that way has really helped me grow my confidence as a professional, because people get a lot of value from it. And it also allows me to give back and get to know people in my new area. So it's just been a really great kind of transition for me.
And what is one of the most significant challenges you've faced along this journey so far?
I would say one of my most significant challenges would be the fact that when I really decided to go for it in terms of my own business, was knowing that just because it was hard didn't mean I was a failure. One book that really kind of changed my outlook on this was Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. And, she talks about the fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And I know it's been, super trendy in the education sphere, and now it's getting a little bit more mainstream. But knowing that a challenge, it's not fatal, right? Just because a deal fell through, or you didn't get the contract signed that you wanted, or clients didn't work out the way that you wanted it to, it doesn't mean that your business is going to go under. It just means you have to say, okay, I have to shift a little bit, and I have to evolve a little bit, and I have to focus on what I do want, not on what I don't want to happen. So really kind of like not just saying, I hate when people are like, oh, be positive, be happy, smile. It's like, okay, that doesn't work. I've never known anyone who just smiled and it made their life better, but actually taking action too, not just listening to it and believing it in my mind, but saying like, okay, now's the time, even if it's just a little half step forward, each time it'll get easier. So taking action in the moment and realizing that even if it doesn't work out exactly how I wanted it to, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will never work. I just have to kind of be flexible and creative with it.
Well, you are speaking our language with the growth mindset right there.
Yeah. I know. You guys are all over that. So, and I think it's a great, as a millennial, I kind of was reading it and I was like, oh my God, this is what they're talking about when they say we all need participation trophies. This is why. I see a little glimmer of myself in that. So, it's just being kind to yourself and knowing that, it's okay to feel that way. You can always change, and just recognizing that little parts of yourself that might need a little work. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means that you have room to grow. And I think that's just part of the human experience.
Do you have a specific example of when you really needed to tap into this perspective?
Definitely. So I can think of a million in terms of my own business, but I think the first time that I realized this is probably the biggest. And that is when I became a teacher. And I actually became a teacher through joining Teach for America. I spent, I think, 8 weeks doing teaching summer school. I was away from my fiance, now husband at the time. And I was with a group of people that I was going to be teaching with. And it was an incredibly stressful time. We were teaching summer school. We were learning how to be teachers. And we had to write lesson plans. And oftentimes we were up late at night. And I remember the first lesson plan I handed in, they had very strict deadlines. I got it in on time. And I was like, okay, great. Like, this is how this is going to be. And this wasn't that hard. And I got notes back from my mentor that was basically like, this is an F. Like, this is a terrible lesson plan. You missed all of these things. And it's kind of like when you get your paper back as a kid and you see all the red marks and you're just like, uh-oh, this isn't going to go very well. I don't even want to turn to the last page and see what the grade is. But feeling that drop and feeling like, oh my God, like I failed. Like, this is terrible. I stayed up all night. And then, I went through the gamut of emotions. Like, first I felt really dejected. And then I felt really angry. And then I felt like, okay, well, maybe I'm just not going to be able to be a teacher. And I started going through, okay, what do I need to do? I'll quit. I'll leave Philadelphia where I was doing my program. I'll go home. And then something inside of me just said, I looked around at everyone also who'd gotten these grades and we were all freaking out. I was like, well, what are you going to do? Like, this is your chance to kind of change it. So in that moment, I decided, I was like, all right, this is not a judgment of your character, which I think is the first time I ever felt that way about a grade. I always took it very personally when I didn't get a good grade before. It's not like an indictment of you. It's just a reflection of the work that you did last night. And let's be honest, maybe you were tired. Maybe you didn't read the right book. Maybe you didn't follow the format. So what? You messed up. So that, I remember, honestly, the tiny little red chair I was sitting in that classroom when I got that email. And it's just because I kind of had that moment where I had a choice, right? I had a choice to either improve and go on and get better, or I had a choice to quit and try something again. And considering I had just quit an old job to start teaching, I figured that would probably not be the best choice. So yeah, that was a big turning point for me for sure.
Yeah, I always love the idea that if you don't get something perfectly, it just means you have more to learn.
Exactly.
I also had to learn that the hard way. I thought I was really good at French until freshman year of college. It's like, oh, I almost failed that test. Am I here because I want all A's or because I really want to learn French?
Ooh, there you go. I know. Do we want to be a gold star? Do we actually want the knowledge?
It seems like fitness is the prime example of this because, in fact, failure in some ways is the goal. Maybe not painful, hurt yourself levels of failure, but if you're not lifting at a certain extent, your muscles can't tear enough to regrow. Do you feel like your work in fitness and health has reframed your perspective on failure? I guess in addition to the ways you were talking about with the growth mindset?
Yeah, definitely. And you're totally right. Sometimes I will write in a plan, do this till failure, which, like you said, basically means you're pushing not only your muscles and your skeletal system, but your central nervous system basically to not the breaking point, but to the brink of your strength. And I think doing that over and over again really has taught me that weightlifting is, for me, almost like a spiritual practice where it reaffirms my view of the world. So that really relates to exactly what you just said. I know when I first started lifting, I would wake up every single morning at 4 a.m. and I'd go to the gym for an hour before I taught. And I can't believe I did that, honestly, even just saying it. But that's very different than what I do now as an entrepreneur. And it's very different than what I do when I'm traveling. So you have to be very flexible with yourself. And you have to know, like, okay, I'm not going to be able to be in the gym 5 or 6 days a week, every single week. Maybe I'll have to do a body weight workout, or I'll have to do bands, or, you have to keep challenging yourself. And I think for me, the best part of lifting is knowing that even if I'm not where I want to be right now, that if I stay consistent and I treat myself right, I will get there. It's not like I have a deadline in mind or I have to get this done in a month. It might be 2 months, 3 months. It might even be a year. But knowing that if you stay consistent with it, you will get the results that you want. Even right now, I'm rebuilding my strength because I was traveling a lot this fall. I didn't get as much time in the gym as I wanted to. And it's hard. I have to pick up weights that were very light for me just a few months ago. And that's where kind of I'm starting over. But I'm already seeing strength gains. And I like to call it like hibernating strength. I know it's there. I just kind of I have to keep working on revealing it. Right. So that's part of the consistency.
I like the idea of like a sleeping bear strength within you. It's like you've got to wake up the bear.
Sure. That's a great visualization when you're in that squat rack. The sleeping bear is coming out.
And I feel like what you said is such a great metaphor for all things, just you said taking care of yourself and being consistent. And I feel like, at least in my experience with, entrepreneurship, I have a tendency, which a lot of entrepreneurs tend to do, which is, to just not do any self-care and just like push, having this expectation that things are going to happen immediately. And so just the idea of knowing that my success is hibernating. And I just have to be consistent and have self-care. I think that that's a really great perspective. And I wonder if there is additional advice or perspectives that you would like to share with other millennials who are also on this path of fulfillment and towards success.
Definitely. And I love that you brought up self-care, because I think when I first started lifting, even just a few years ago, I thought self-care was like going to the spa and like getting a massage. And in my mind, I was like, I can't afford that. Like, I can't afford self-care. And I've learned actually that, self-care is a lot of different things. It's not just eating organic foods and going away with your girlfriends. It could be going for a walk, putting your phone on airplane mode and just like after 6 p.m. and not going on Instagram. It can be reading 10 pages of a book. It can be drinking water. I think integrating that self-care is really important, and knowing that you can care for yourself, and that's going to allow you to be better for others too. And even if you can just take a little bit of time every single day and just like honor yourself, that's honestly the best thing that happens when I work with women, is they realize, oh, the world is not going to implode if I don't do everything, right? Making sure that you're delegating and taking time for yourself can really make your life so much better in like pretty much every way.
Speaking of that, what unique challenges do you feel that members of the millennial generation face?
I think for our generation, the first thing I think was like, even saying millennial, people sometimes like make a face. You're like, oh, millennials, we're not getting married at the same age. We're not buying homes at the same age. We're not having children. I just was talking with someone over the holidays about how, at my age, I was doing X, Y, and Z. And in my mind, I was like, well, you probably didn't have like a mortgage's worth of debt either. But I would say for millennials, knowing that even though we might have been dealt an interesting hand, every generation is, and kind of like taking back control really, and not just thinking about all the negative reasons why you can't do what you want. The big shift for me mentally when I decided to start my own business was, just questioning like, what if I could create my own business? What would my life look like? Who would I be working with? How would I make money? What would my schedule be? And just opening that door a crack and saying, what if, and allowing a little bit of light to come in, it really allowed me to de-stress and say, oh, like I'm in control of my life. It doesn't matter that I graduated in 2009 and, I was competing with people who'd been laid off in their 50s. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, I'm not going to let those things hold me back. And in fact, part of a great thing of our generation is that we did kind of come of age during this time of strife and social discord, but that has really illuminated our experience. And I think that that's a great part of being in the millennial generation, is that you kind of have one foot in the pre-iPhone age, and then now we're fully immersed in this crazy technological world. So I think kind of honoring what we do have as opposed to just focusing on the negative really helped me. And I would encourage people to do that too.
Lily, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your amazing wisdom and perspectives today. Would you share with the audience where they could find out more about you and the work that you're doing? Maybe get some little tidbits and tips from you to help them throughout the year.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to share that I do have a free 30-day challenge on my website, and it really includes everything that I talked about in terms of creating new habits for yourself and a health and fitness routine. That's on my website, and that's Lily, Lily, Fontas, Fontas.com/challenge. And you can also always connect with me on Instagram. Lilybirdlifts is my handle on there, but I will not respond after 6 p.m. because I hide my phone.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. This is great.
For show notes and previous episodes, or to learn more about our coaching and event offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. That's millennial, MILLENNIAL. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
Our theme music was composed and performed by our very own Blake Brandis.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Brittany Felix. Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!